Hi everyone, Joy here. Today I'm here to talk to you about um traumatic brain injury and whether or not it is actually a disability or if it's a superpower. I was having a conversation with a friend of mine recently and we were both agreed that it was like a superpower, but it can also be debilitating. So, depending on the moment, depending on your perception, depending on where you're at in life. And I wanted people to understand and stuff how, yes, traumatic brain injuries can be a disability, like when we go to learn something new or when we are taking forever and a day to understand something, it seems like to everybody else and stuff. It's just usually because there's a loop that our brain is caught in, so to speak, and stuff. We don't know how to break through the loop. So then all of a sudden it's like we stutter or we have moments of where we can't really do what we're really looking to do and stuff just because we're more stuck in that it's like a within a singular cell stuck within that loop, and sometimes it's more than one cell is what it feels like, and more than likely that is the case, but that means you have to undo each cell and the energy within it in order to make it so that it would actually be able to heal better. Um, and depending on where you're at in your self growth and what your understanding of energy work is, it can change your effect of like what happens when you go to do energy work. But that being said, those that actually know energy really well also know how to support somebody in sending love to the locations of where it is needed. And in moments, yes, we do struggle when it comes to, again, that learning curve, basically. Like when somebody tries to explain something to us, it's like you have to start from where they're at. And if you can't find where they're at, well, then you may not be the best teacher for them. You may not be the best support for them, even. You have to learn to connect with them somewhere. If you can't connect with them somewhere, you're going to be pretty stuck and lost of how to help them. Um, from what I understood, that there was a big enough challenge at times and stuff that I would hesitate to do a lot of things until I had enough information that my mind had gathered over time that I was able to move forward. Now, it doesn't mean I needed all the information. I said enough information. There's a difference. And for people to understand what that really means, there is definitely, it's like saying, okay, I've got 1 through 5 and A through F and stuff of like just beginner stages of information and stuff. And if you have enough of that information, you go sit there and go, oh, well, I don't need um, 6 through 28 or whatever it is, 25 or whatever it is for the alphabet or something like that. Or basically, you don't need to have G through Z, is a better way of putting that, I guess, for now. Um, so when we go to do these things, we want other people to understand it's not that we're stupid. Believe me, there's a lot of things we actually do know. But yeah, when people treat us like we're stupid and stuff, it kind of gives us the advantage and stuff because people don't really understand what our superpower is. Our superpower is to turn to intuition. We trust ourselves in the moment and we will allow ourselves to feel it out to see if this is what really serves us at this time. And if it doesn't, then, well, it doesn't. But a lot of people don't like that. They think that we're just being too egotistical or stubborn or whatever. There may be some of that in there, but it's not going to be the main reason. Um, like if you try to nudge us along to do something, it's like more or less that it's like if you were to ask us instead of saying like, what do you want to do with this or whatnot type of thing, is that there's different questions you can ask us that would actually help the process along a lot quicker. So like, be like, well, what do you feel like you need to do while you're here today? Instead of, hey, can you help out with this? If you're running into a roadblock and you're asking somebody, hey, what do you want to do with this? Instead, you can ask them, what do you feel like you need to do here today? Mostly because that opens it up for their mind and their heart and their spirit and their body to actually act in one accord and go, what do I need to do here today? What do I feel like I need to do here today? There's a difference. What do I need to do, or what do I feel like I need to do? And sometimes the what do I need to do and sometimes what do I feel like I need to do, sometimes those are actually right in alignment, sometimes they're not. And when they're not, that means that the individual won't be doing the task as much as up to par of like what somebody else would want. So like we can't reach your expectations of what you think we should be doing at that time of how you want it done. So in that case, that's usually when we would sit there and say, well, maybe you ought to do it then because I don't know how to help you. And that's where it's like it's fascinating to be able to be in interactions with other people who are dealing with traumatic brain injuries and have autism and stuff like that. So like they're not always correlated in the sense of like where autism and TBI are together at the same time, but in my case it was. I had generational autism and then I had traumatic brain injuries. And then on top of it, I had the aspect of autism that was that came from those traumatic brain injuries or something like that, I guess is how someone kind of explained it to me once. So when we actually get to a point where we are looking for, well, what do I need to do? It's like, for instance, I was really angry one day. And mostly because I didn't know how to forgive somebody first for allowing myself to let this person, it's like take away the fluffy, loving, laughing kind of spirit that I am. And when I did that, I became really angry, I guess, and I didn't know for a long time. So I learned that I had suppressed these emotions, these thoughts and feelings and emotions and stuff like all these years. And I ended up drawing something because I was I had called up a friend and I told him what was going through my head instead of what I really wanted to do. And he's like, that's kind of violent. And I'm just like, well, yeah, very well might be and stuff. But at the same time, that's how I feel because this is what has been done. You know, sometimes we want to be like off of, I can't remember which TV show it was and stuff, where they had an individual who was like ripping apart their pillows and stuff, but then they were like using a knife to stab it and they ended up destroying their mattress. Like, well, I don't want to do that. But I do want to express this so that it's just not sitting within me, because the longer it sits within me, well, the longer that I end up having an issue. And I haven't finished the artwork yet, but let me see if I can hold this while I do this. this is what I ended up drawing. And basically, it was like with the energy of what I call the God frequencies. And it's just on paper, so but it still helps so that I got it out. So this one says, I forgive you, and then at the bottom it says, hey. And then it goes like the oh kind of thing and stuff, like as if someone would do it in a song or whatever. There was a song that I was listening to at the time. And it's like, I forgive you. I want you to pay attention here. But I want you to understand, this is how angry I was with you because you decided to do whatever at that time. And it was like when I look at that, it helped me to understand I was angry at them for taking away the fluff in me, or the beauty in me, or whatever you want to call it, and stuff, the nice soft cuddly me, instead of and as far as like for other individuals, let's say that they wanted to um, uh, explain to me in life and stuff that this life was for me and not necessarily that I had to be a victim of it. Well, if that was for me and stuff, then it was for me to learn how to stand on my personal power and say, hey, you really pissed me off. You don't want to piss me off particularly. I'm the one who's on your side. I'm the one who's sitting here trying to help you out. And if you're pissing me off and I get pissed off, it's for a reason. It's like, and sometimes there is a learning lesson even on my part. I'm not the one who's always going to be right, but a lot of the time, somehow I end up being right. That's what I mean by having intuition as a superpower, trusting yourself. If you're trusting yourself more than you are others, well, maybe the people that you're surrounded by aren't your people. But as much as we want to understand that they don't, like, I wanted to give them excuses in a sense, but I wasn't at the same time. So, like, I wanted to give them the benefit of the doubt for the fact that they just didn't know any better. But I also had to be reasonable in another aspect of saying things like, I'm not okay with what you did. Yes, it did happen, and I'm not going to deny it anymore, because the longer I deny it, the more it affects my mental health, the more it affects my well-being of my heart, my mind, my body, my spirit. If that is not working properly, it's because the other person's refusing, and they're staying in denial. They're refusing to see what they have done. And I realized that when I did that drawing of where it says, I forgive you, you notice that it's like in a lot of it is within the energy of electricity looking, or lightning kind of looking. I don't know how else you want to put that. But that's because I was very angry, but I needed to let the anger out in an energy of focusing on flow, like with water at the same time. And I haven't finished the drawing and stuff yet, so I don't know exactly how it's going to finish turning out and stuff, but I definitely have a lot going on there and stuff when other individuals took advantage of me, and then either they didn't remember because they had so much trauma that they were dealing with themselves, or they were focused on staying in denial. Like, they didn't want to own that they made that mess and that they did that. They didn't want to own it. So they ended up trying to make me look like I was the crazy one at the time. And yeah, so I've been really pissed. I've been really angry that I've had to put up with all of their shenanigans all this time and not have a voice. I mean, in a sense, if you look at what people have said for all these different things, like it's like, for instance, about the whole thing of this life was for us and not against us. Well, if it was for us, then it certainly was a very challenging life to choose into. And what I had to do was I had to realize, I mean, throughout life, I did focus on the fact that I knew it was for a purpose. Until I find that purpose for all of what has happened and what I've experienced, it's like you can't really move on. Once you find the purpose of each one, you can actually move forward. That's very important to find that purpose of what experiences you've had, especially if they're causing you a lot of blockage to be able to move forward. If you don't understand, like, why did this happen? And you sit there and go, well, I need to take a closer look at that. Why did this happen? Who do I need to go to help find that clarity? And I would have a lot of people that would say, in the religion that I was in before at least, that they would say things kind of like, that sometimes we are, I'm trying to remember what I was going to say. I apparently have blocked that one out. Whew, okay, that's a fun one. But basically, and stuff, when we're doing what we can to explain to people that we're doing the best we can with what we've got, and that we've basically been brought into a life where we were both kind of broken, but it doesn't excuse us from our behaviors. It just tells us that we have a lot to learn. And yes, I did leave those circumstances. I was following intuition most of my life, if not all of it, pretty much. When I talked with an individual one time, when I was talking with some women in a group therapy kind of thing, and it was after I had left my circumstances, I was explaining to them what I had experienced, and they basically were like, from what you're saying, I couldn't remember, I probably will remember in a minute and stuff, like what I was saying at that time, but basically her response to for what I had told her at the time was, I can tell that you've been doing this alone, like all of your life. Yes, there may have been some people there, but they weren't really there for you. They were more of a blockage in your life at times. And you had to choose and discern whether or not to stay with that person. There was the interesting fact that I had individuals that were a sibling of mine that was like, I was there for you brushing your teeth when you were a child. Well, I don't recall that. I'm glad that you do, but I don't. I mean, if you were really there for me, there's some things I do remember, obviously, and stuff, but because of how much traumatic experiences were surrounding our lives, I remembered the trauma. A lot of the good things, like I could, if I really focused on some of it, I could probably find actually a decent amount of good things from over the years. But here was the other hard part about that. When people would look at how we are stuck and say like, oh, your head was always up in the clouds. I'm like, yeah, you would want to have your head up in the clouds too after what I'd seen. Is what I wanted to tell them. And I couldn't tell them. I couldn't sit there and tell them in the moment because the space that they were in was, I have to be right. So I let them think what they wanted to think. And I don't mean like I had to be right. I was meaning that they were saying to them, like, somewhere their ego was showing up so big that it was like they had to be right. Instead of understanding that there might be something that they're missing. And we don't like that feeling, especially after we've been through so much trauma. We don't like to feel like that there is something missing and stuff. And so it's very hard for us to usually set aside the ego in that moment and go, okay, I'm safe, I'm secure, I'm stable, and I can rest in assurance that I've created this. And at times we don't know exactly how to allow ourselves to understand that the other person and where they're at in their journey. But sometimes where they're at in their journey is so cataclysmic that we are butting heads, and that's all we can do. And it was interesting because I had people that were like trying to say how bad and wrong I was, basically, most of my life. Not all of my life, but most of it. There was portions where they could see the good and stuff, but there was portions where I could only see the good about them too and stuff, It was like I couldn't understand how an individual would want to throw my homework out the car window when I didn't do what she wanted me to do. And it was my choice. It was my choice to take my homework to work, basically, at that time. And because they were offering to help, so that way I could get my high school diploma. And that was nearly over 10 years ago. And they just threw it out the window and stuff and were throwing their tantrum because I wasn't listening to them and doing what they wanted me to do. What they want. I wasn't doing what they wanted me to do, yeah. And later I learned through other people that that was a very inappropriate behavior for them to have done, especially since they were the adult. And the reason this kind of comes up now is because I'm just barely starting to go back to finish my final year of high school. And this time, at this moment, I don't have anybody here to really hold me back other than my own thoughts of like from my experiences or whatever else and stuff. And so when I go to work on even just the placement testing that they do to see how much you remember. When I did that, I was, at least for the first portion and stuff, there was moments where I've actually had to stop and I had to allow myself just to feel the emotions and recognize what was coming up for me instead of just trying to plow through like I normally do and stuff, because of where my brain and my insecurities were at, I would just be like, well, I don't understand that one, so I'm going to fill this one and just do a random thing, because that's what people would tell me to do if I didn't know. And I would realize, that I needed personally to understand that I needed to understand that I needed to process those things right there and then, because otherwise they were just going to sit and bug me the rest of the time. And that was just because there was so much emotion that had shown up with it, that's what I needed to do. And I would find that one was like where I had an experience where I was working at a Walmart one time. And the manager that was there was like, you need to get it done like this. Like really fast. But it was a lot faster than that. I'm just trying not to shake the camera right now. And I was just like, I can't do that. I can't go as fast as you want me to. And I guess at the time, I was like looking for alternate routes or something like that for what I could be doing there because of that reason and stuff. And one of the things I was looking into was doing like maybe the night shift or maybe doing cleaning floors or whatever. Well, when I was a kid, I had worked with my dad at one of my dads. I'd worked with him at a elementary school and was helping him out so that because his body was hurting or whatever else and stuff, and he was trying to have us to have him help him and stuff so that he could get more done quicker and stuff so that he wouldn't be on his feet as long. And when doing that, yeah, we learned some skills. I got to learn how to scrub a floor with the big scrubber brush thing and everything. And oh my gosh, it's snowing outside. I throw a pie. Like, seriously? I was thinking about doing some stuff today, and I'm just like, this is not good timing for it to snow, I felt like. But anyways, squirrel moment, and come and gone. So but anyways, when I told people that I knew how to do the scrubber thing that I learned from with my dad at his work, the coworkers that were there were laughing at me. And because they were laughing at me, and it's like in their heads, it must have sounded so ridiculous. They're like sitting there going, yeah, right, like you know how to do that. And it's like, if you showed me just the general basic ropes of it again and stuff, I could probably do it really well. But because they sat there and laughed at me instead and didn't even consider, well, why don't we go ahead and give it a try and see what happens? Let's give you the training. Let's get you going on this and see how it happens. See if it actually works for you. Because if it does, then heck, I could have had a job. I could have had a job that I would have been able to do and feel a lot better about like what I was doing there at work and stuff, because then at the very least I would be able to support people in that way at the very least. But it was like they weren't open to somebody who was as young as I was, I guess, possibly, or something else. I don't know what it was. I was at least 20, 19 or 20 and stuff when that was happening. And I'm just like, how can people be so like just misunderstand somebody that much? Like that's what my life has been, is misunderstood. It's like, you want to know why I'm upset? Well, I've been treated like crap. I've been treated like lower than dirt and like I should be shoved aside and thrown underneath a rug and left there to die. And sometimes that was more true than whatnot. Than yeah. But when I finally got to a point to where I was able to understand that this was what was showing up for me when I was doing a test, all because I came across a story that kind of talked about a very similar job position, but it was like doing it with the reading portion of things. And I realized that that was one of the things that showed up for me and stuff, and so I wrote it down as a note. I allowed myself to work through whatever I needed to at that moment just so that I could get through the test. At least that portion of the test. And I did what I needed to and I moved forward. Well, the other thing that was happening for me was that when I first started the test, I was kind of sitting there, and at the beginning of the test, at least, and stuff, I was focusing on, nobody else is here to stop you. You can do this. You're ready to do this. It's safe to do this. All these other little things like that and stuff. And I would start allowing myself to feel relief and understand they're not here anymore. They don't have power over you, kind of thing. these the people that did what they did is just they're just not here in this moment and stuff. And so I that's what I was focusing on, and I was still having a lot show up for me. So I was only able to get through 2 out of the 4 parts of the test. I did start the third one, but then I got to a point to where I was shutting down, and I was like, okay, I need to take a break. So I took a break and left or whatever and stuff. But I took my notes and stuff, and there was probably one other thing in there that I didn't mention. But the point is and stuff is that if you, for instance, if you don't have a high school diploma, I'm gonna let you know that when you're ready, you can go and take your high school diploma. You can go and do that. There's places that allow that. But the other thing is that to understand and know is that you're not alone anymore, and in a good way. You've got support. You've got people here that will care and understand and recognize that honestly want to help, want to make sure that you get what you need. And some people would be like, there's times like when I was trying to fill out for taxes recently, we didn't get that completed yet, but there was times that when we were trying to fill that out and find out that information and stuff, and they were just like, hey, did you have this filled out online or whatever with the IRS? And I'm just like, no, I haven't really had that luxury. And I didn't realize what I had said until I had said it, if that makes any sense. So moments later, I kind of was just like, I'm not sure if that's a luxury or if that's a need. And the person I was working with goes, in this day and age, it's a need. Um, or she had actually just said it's a need. And I was just like, all right. Well, then I started to see why, because I called the IRS people up shortly afterwards, and they don't have a part of the system um, set up so that you can call in and get immediate assistance and stuff. Like, they're just like, oh, just call back another day, basically. And it's like, holy cow, like, how many people do you have calling in that have this issue and you haven't resolved it? And it's like they were requiring like that I had a credit card or a loan or something like that just to do taxes. And I'm sitting here going, okay, how does a person in my kind of circumstances do taxes then? I mean, you don't have what I need in order to make it through just to do this beginning stage. So, I mean, it's a good learning experience to understand that they require that, but I'm sitting here going, why do they require it? Especially when there's people like me that are like, we're fighting tooth and nail just to be able to get a foot in the door just so that we can have an income. And it's like, you're really not helping. That's stopping people like me to be able to from being able to move forward. So yeah, I was kind of upset, still currently kind of am. But it's just, what are we going to do? What are we going to do about this situation? How can we change the circumstances or whatever? And I would sit there and think, well, I could reach out to somebody to try and see if they could loan me the money to open up an account that is a credit card temporarily, and then close it out afterwards, and then I would just do what I need to start paying them back if I needed to. I don't exactly have a whole lot of money up and going right now, so I have enough to be able to take care of basic rent, and my basic rent is not the same as everybody else. Those that are on disability understand what that's like. Those that are with Section 8 housing understand what that's like, but mine is even more unique than that, even in some cases. And there's some people that are going through what I'm going through in that sense. So but I don't know who they are. So it's just like feel like I'm once again, in a sense, I feel like on some of this, I'm doing this alone once again. I'm having to figure out something that nobody else is there to really help me to figure out, it seems like. And following that intuition, following that, utilizing that superpower is crucial in something like this, even. Just what do I need to do for my next step if I'm going to accomplish that? And what always, things that come to mind for that sometimes don't always make sense. In fact, you might find sometimes that more often than not, there's a lot of it that doesn't make sense. And sometimes you might find, oh yeah, I can see why that makes sense. Okay, let's go ahead and do that, But if you follow that intuition in that moment, you'll actually find that there's a reason for it. So, at this point in time, I bid you adieu, and I acknowledge those that are with traumatic brain injuries and autism, and that have that superpower of following intuition. At the same time, I acknowledge those that don't, because I understand we are all different and unique. So I know that you're loved. Big bear air hugs, and namaste.